Another big weekend at Gulfstream Park. They had a big weekend last weekend, and right back again to Gulfstream with what, one, two, three, four, five stakes races, five graded stakes races, and we need a little help. So we call in one of our good friends. She was actually out at Gulfstream Park last weekend. You've seen her out there here and there the last few weeks. We know her. She's been a big part of the Canterbury team for years now. Fantastic handicapper. Someone I love talking races with all the time. Angela Hermann. Angela, how you doing?
Hello, Gino. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for hanging out. We saw you and heard you at Gulfstream Park last week, so you've been doing a little work with them, and we know all the fantastic work you've done at Canterbury. And this is a fun time of the year in racing, right? Because now we all start really paying attention to the Kentucky Derby prep races, the Oaks prep races. It seems like every weekend it's a different racetrack that gets to sort of have the spotlight. And this weekend, some Kentucky Derby points on the line at Gulfstream, and I guess there are kind of at Santa Anita, but it's a race where the four horses are all Baffert horses and none of them are really eligible for points. So not really any points in that particular race, but nonetheless, these are important weekends because the road, right? We're on the road to the Derby.
Yeah, a turning of the page, I guess you would say, from Breeders' Cup time back to Triple Crown Trail. And
Yep.
I mean, I was at the Pegasus last weekend, lucky enough to be a part of that. It seems kind of like the cherry on top, putting a bow on the older handicap division because a lot of those horses are going off to different careers now. So now we turn our attention back to the 3-year-olds,
Yeah.
and they've done that majorly at Gulfstream on Saturday. And there's a little something for everybody. So as we go through these different races, we'll see some intersection of local horses, but some different faces as well. That might be the late developing crowd of this 3-year-old crop. So I'm interested to see how it shakes out.
Yeah, and I think in the races that we're going to talk about, we're going to focus on the stakes races, the graded stakes. So we're going to look at race six, and then races 9 through 12. A couple of them not the greatest betting races in the world. Some of them aren't the strongest, but then we do have a couple really nice betting races, a couple of grass races. So yeah, we'll get a little bit of everything in the races we are discussing as we take a look at the DRF past performances. If you ever need any help handicapping the races, head to drf.com. And I'm personally always the big fan of Formulator because it's just so easy to get to the replays and then one click to the charts and then one click to pedigree information, anything you need. Now, they kept the sixth race, Angela, which is the swale, the grade 3 swale, out of a lot of the late exotics because there will be a heavy favorite in this race on the outside with Super Chow, who is 5 for 6. He's a really nice 3-year-old sprinter. He's done almost nothing wrong. He has one loss in the Saratoga Special when he faced Graded Stakes Company. Now, he's drawn pretty well, and he's really quick. There's some other speed in here, but he's been in races with other speed, and he's won the battle of those speeds before, and he's drawn well for a horse with his running style. But if we want to knock him a little bit, or we want to, always try to question a heavy favorite, this will be the first time he tries to go 7 furlongs. And the only time he went beyond 6 furlongs was when he lost. Now, that was also against really tough company, so it probably wasn't just the distance that day. Let's talk a little bit about Super Chow because he's the horse to beat in here.
Yeah, you really laid him out very nicely. He drew very favorably for his running style, even if he doesn't get the lead outright, which is what he's done in his last 3. He'll be able to stay in close contact. We don't think he has much of a move to him yet. At least paper would indicate that. But given the lack of traffic that you would anticipate from that post, he and Chantal Sutherland will at least have the option to sit first or second if he needs to. But Super Chow is going to be tough. I am not going to single him just based on what you said, the 7 furlongs. And the fact that he was so good right away, I don't know how many more steps at this point he has in him forward.
I
Whereas
agree.
with some of his competition, I do see a bit more wiggle room to improve.
And I think while his development is probably pretty close to like the top, we are also going to see him maybe hit the peak from distance at the same time, right? Those might be coming together simultaneously where he might have topped out. Some of these other horses are improving and they actually might be getting better with distance, whereas the distance now might start to become an equalizer for a horse like him, who he was drifting out quite a bit at the top of the lane, but he kept going. It wasn't like he was ever really in, any peril of losing that race whatsoever. And he beat a horse like Two of a Kind, who was also in that race. But if we're going to get around Super Chow, we're going to look to try to beat him. I thought there were a couple other pretty talented runners in here. That next tier of horses, I think we can make cases for a few. The one, General Jim, had legitimate trouble last time out. He was blocked. He was behind horses. He really never got a shot to run. And now the blinkers will come on, and hopefully that can get him a little bit more focused. I would have no problem with someone showing a little more support to Two of a Kind, thinking that he might have needed his last race and could step forward. And even Araj, I thought was pretty impressive in that debut. And I don't think he's necessarily a need the lead horse. So those are kind of that next tier of horses. Did you look at any of them favorably?
I definitely looked at Araj very favorably. I had just left Gulfstream the day that Araj debuted, and even though he did go off at under 10-1 and took a little bit of money for a barn that is good at getting horses ready, I thought that he was relatively cold on the board. He made an excellent impression on the track. He's a very attractive horse, and I didn't think that 7 furlongs would hamper him the way that he finished up in that first race. Now, the D'Angelo barn does very well locally. They're not as well known nationally, but in the couple of places that they are, usually they get more heavily bet than I think they will in this spot. And just the fact that this horse has only had the one start, won his maiden debut, I think will leave him at a decent number on the board. I don't expect 6-1. I'd say 9-2. Some of the local support will go his way, but Irad Ortiz sees it fit to hop aboard, and this is one of those horses that came around a touch later, and I really think has a big potential ahead of him. Now he has to prove it on a dry track, but the field that he beat wasn't bad. And the horse that finished last in that race, Drinking Problem, won next out on the turf going 2 turns, and then came back and actually won today. Of course, that's much different than the task that he's asked to do on Saturday, but Araj still, I think, showed enough in there where even if you don't think he can win, you can't toss him completely from the equation because he's going to be a fair value, and there's very obvious talent there.
Yeah, he was the horse that I looked the most favorably on too, Angela. I think he's going to be based on like value, probably my top selection in here, and the horse who I'm the most interested in. And I don't think he's a need the lead horse. He drew the rail in his debut, so I think they just sort of used the rail, wanted to get aggressive and make sure that they didn't get into trouble, and then he didn't have as much pressure, so they just kind of went on with it. I don't think he'll be right on the lead in this race. I hope he's not. I'd love to see him sitting more off the pace in here a little bit. Third or fourth would be perfect. He looked a little green in his debut, which I liked. It was in the slop too, so it doesn't really bother me that he's kind of out in the middle of the track a little bit. He was clear, and he was the horse that I really thought was worth using and including in exotics and playing to win if we can get 6-1 on the morning line. I think what you said is fine. Like 4-1 plus feels like nice value for him in this spot.
I would say so, and I believe you're showing the replay right now,
Yep.
and this is not the most professional effort that you see out of a first-time starter, but like you said, that also gives room to improve in the tangibles, not just the talent, but the focus, straightening out, relaxing, listening to the rider a little bit more. People loved Infinite Series this day. I can recall that very well. He had a ton of works leading into that first start, and Araj did too. He had a fair amount, but there were breaks in there. And once they finally put all the pieces together, he really exploded in that win. And as you saw in the finish, it didn't look like he was running on fumes at that point.
No,
There's still more here with this horse. So I'm pretty excited to see not only what he does in the swale, but what happens maybe when they do finally put him around 2 turns.
you got to give a yeah, we're both on Araj in here. And I got to give a shout out to one of my buddies from high school, Scott Hogan. When we were out at LaSalle High School, we had a friend that we would always sort of laugh at because he was a real like how you and I would joke about California guys, and he would be like, oh, and we would talk about him and we called him Keanu, and we would say, oh, bro, Keanu, man, what's going on? How you doing? So Keanu Reeves, who is one of the coolest dudes in the entire world. Shout out to Keanu, and shout out to one of my buddies who I know plays the races sometimes, Scott Hogan, who was probably getting a laugh if he heard that one. So a good look at the swale early on the card before we get to the 4 graded stakes races that will end the Gulfstream Park Saturday card. Anything else you want to mention about the swale before we move on?
I will say for General Jim, I know that he had, I say legit trouble, but I didn't think that General Jim and Luis Saez really had to come to a screeching halt in the Mucho Macho Man. I
It
thought that
almost seemed like he could have maybe pushed himself out there if he was just maybe traveling a little bit better. I know what you mean. He was
yeah,
kind of discouraged by it, but I thought he could have done a little bit more than he did.
that's
I
fair.
I
But
wonder
he
if
drew
they
the rail
try to get
again.
yeah, and I know, and that's the thing. It's like you would think they would want to try to get a little more aggressive, but that wouldn't work out well in this race.
I
Trying to
don't
get
think
more
so.
aggressive. So
No.
he's probably going to want to just take back, sit, and see if he can just tip to the outside and angle around and just get him to relax. But I agree with you. I just thought there was like Araj was the one that has the most like intrigue to me at the price. So let's take a little swing there in race number 6 as we
With it.
move. Go ahead.
I said I'm with you.
Yeah, we're with it. We're with it. Let's move to the ninth. That's the Kitten's Joy. This one kicks off the late pick 4, and there are some really important races this weekend as far as that coast to coast pick 5 is concerned. And Santa Anita is also going to have the I think the jackpot payout this weekend also. So there's a ton of stuff
Mhm.
happening. That coast to coast pick 5. The races are drawn for this weekend, and they will include a lot of the stakes races that you're going to see back and forth between Gulfstream Park and Santa Anita. So the schedule for this weekend, Angela, as I'm pulling it up right now, santanita.com, we've got Gulfstream's 9th, 10th, and 11th. So all these 3 races are going to, or go, excuse me, 10th, 11th, and 12th. So 10th, 11th, and 12th will all be a part of that pick 5 for coming up this weekend. Let's talk about it, Angela, in race number 9, the Kitten's Joy. So we have 3-year-olds. We have mile and a 16th on the turf course for the distance. A lot of these horses we saw in the Dania Beach, 4 of them. And this should be kind of a fun competitive race. In that race, Candidate got the lead, and that was his 3rd consecutive win. Maybe gets a little more pace pressure in here. Kind of curious to see if a couple of these horses try some different tactics. Obviously, Major Dude looks like a horse who could take a nice step forward off of that race. He was chasing Lone Speed. It was his first start back from the Breeders' Cup. And then you have some other wild card horses who, I mean, you can really make a case for a lot of these if you like them at prices. Who are some of the horses that were on your radar here?
I take your point with Candidate, and the Dania Beach impressed me more with Major Dude, but Major Dude is, I don't want to say obvious on paper, but very well qualified to be the favorite. Put it
Yeah,
that way.
I
He
agree.
finished up well enough. Yeah, he
Yep,
makes
chasing
sense.
Lone Speed, first start in a couple months, closed well. He
Right.
can even get a little closer if he wants to. He'll be sharper, like no real knocks.
Yeah, and he would probably be the most logical one that you'd point to if somebody was looking to just really narrow this down. I
Yep.
was kind of interested in a couple to his outside though, that being one of the other Todd Pletcher runners, Dude in Colorado, who even though I don't think he'll get the lead outright, I thought just was that much better than the field that he beat when they tried to put him on the turf and he went over to the all weather and he finished up very well that day. Now, those fractions, they're not going to blow you away, but that's why I don't think that this horse will be right up front and center. I also don't think he'll be 6-1.
No,
I would
he
say,
beat Mooncat, who's also in here, and that race is good. That December 24th race that was taken off. This race has come back pretty good. We've seen Fort Wilderness come back. He ran 3rd in a maiden special weight. Mooncat came back to win when they were on the turf. There's a horse named Max Swagger who's actually running on Friday in a maiden claiming race, dropping in class, and I think it's a strong race too. He's a player. This is a fun race. I think a little bit like when you really start diving into each of these horses, they all have a pretty good amount of upside here.
yeah, and there's different, just depending on what your angles typically are with these
Mm-hmm.
horses, you can mold them into something that you could play. Now,
Absolutely.
Say Magnifique, the horse that was second to back when Duke in Colorado was very well bet in his second start, also came back to win for Chad Brown. Now that was at Aqueduct, both over good turf courses. Some things to work out there, but I was more impressed with his race at Gulfstream. It seemed like a very good prep and maybe impressive enough to his conditioners where they opted to put him in here. So I think maybe even they were a bit surprised at how well the horse ran. And his family is kind of a mixed bag when you look through there, but you do see multiple graded stakes winners in Australia, overseas. There's some different horses that can handle a lot of different things. So if it does rain and there is a very uncertain forecast coming for the weekend, Dude in Colorado is a horse who's shown that he can handle things on the turf,
Yep.
on that all weather down there. and he can show a little bit of speed to get himself out of any potential trouble. The other long shot that I was looking at is the have to pop a cat on the outside, Bobby O. Mark Cassie has a couple in here, but Jose Morelos is on the 5. And Lights of Broadway does come out of the pulpit. Yes, I understand that they put this horse into a more recent race, but Bobby O has been working really, really well at Palmettos. If you can pull up some of the videos that are on XBTV,
Mhm.
you can see that this horse has grown up a bit and could be better than he was at 2. Now, it could be very much viewed as a fluke the way that he won with anticipation because it was so slow up front. The figure didn't come back good. He was 23 to 1. His more well fancied stablemate was way back, and the winner is came back to thump him in the Bourbon. But at least they saw enough with this horse early on where they thought he would be a graded stakes type. I don't think that he meets the toughest field in the world to get back on track in the Kitten's Joy. He gets the outside, and for the price that he's going to be, and with the success that Mark Cassie and Jose Ortiz have had together down here, I thought he might be worth a second look. Do get a
Yeah,
look at him on the track.
he should sit pretty close too in this race. I think he can sit real close as he's shown his best race was in the wind anticipation when he was right there on the lead. They were going slow, but he's sat close in dirt races going a little bit quicker too. And I think in this race, I just don't know if Candidate's going to get the same type of trip. I feel like there will be a little bit more pace pressure between a few of them in here. The one that I was a little intrigued by, I guess I might give him one more shot, is Suzak, the 2 who's going to make his second start in the U.S. for Graham Motion. And, in that race in the Dania Beach, he got bumped around pretty bad at the start, and then he got forced really wide into the turn, and then he tried to move into the inside, and he was in traffic. It just was not comfortable. He was bumping around. It was just not a very good trip for him. And then on top of that, he's chasing lone speed in his first start in a few months, and he has a rider who's really been struggling. So all of those put together, now you feel like Joel and Flavian and these guys who are so good, literally 2 of the best riders in the world, are going to get out of the funk that they're in at some point. But you don't want to take really short prices on them right now until you start to see it. And this horse isn't really going to be a short price. I think this is probably fair in the 6 to 10 to 1-ish range for Suzak. I'd probably give him a shot in here, but I do agree with your assessment that I'll probably play this race with like Major Dude and probably 1 or 2 others in here. I like the case you built for a Dude in Colorado. You started to talk about Lights at Broadway. I mean, he wouldn't be a shock to me. His race was fine. He was chasing lone speed. That was his first start on the turf. I don't mind him. I think I just like others a little bit more.
I don't like Lights of Broadway. I thought it was just interesting to note that Jose Ortiz was on the horse who hasn't run since October,
Mhm.
whereas Jose Morelos, who Mark Cassie hardly uses at all, ends up on Lights of Broadway. Now, that's something way out of my control. I'm not in the office in the morning, so maybe there was a fight to get onto the 5. I strongly doubt it. But in mentioning riders, like you said, Joel Rosario being in the slump that he is at the moment didn't seem to get along that well with
Yeah.
Suzak when they were
No, you're
together.
right. They didn't. They didn't at all. It was the first quarter was brutal. It was like everything, and when it's all that much trouble, when it's like a slow start and then you're in some traffic and then you're wide, then you wonder, it just maybe the marriage here wasn't all that great. Could it be
Well, you
better,
you
right?
can't take a horse and a jockey to couples therapy,
Yeah,
so
right.
that
Yeah, I was gonna
worries me
say,
with these
could
two.
could it be better second time out? Sure, but when someone's in a funk like that, you just demand value, right? Make sure it's a price that you feel like is fair for these horses right now. But yeah, this is kind of a fun race. Anything else in here worth mentioning?
No, I covered my points. I think that Major Dude is the horse to beat, but I am going to try to do so with Dude in Colorado and Boppy O. And Boppy O, as well as uh, your horse Suzak, are 2 that I would want to look at on the track. See if Suzak is maybe trying to bite Joel Rosario, or if he's
Yeah.
listening to him in the warm up, if they break off together and try to, you know, actually have some kind of rapport, or if Suzak is just going to do what he wants and Joel Rosario is going to hang on for the ride. I think that Bobby O, just off the layoff, is worth noting if he's going to get hot coming back to the races or if he looks eager and ready to go, because I don't think he's going to be 12 to 1, but he's going to indicate a lot of his readiness just before the race.
Let's continue along next to race number 10. We're in the forward gal, the grade 3 forward gal. And in this race, a couple horses that will take a good amount of support are the 3 Atomically, who was only like 6-1 in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. Phillies going back and looking at it, coming in off back-to-back victories. You have the 6 Lynx, who's intriguing. Both the 7 and the 8 come in off of really impressive victories. Red Carpet Ready is 2 for 2. Undervalued Asset won the debut for Chad Brown. And then towards the outside, Positano Sunset was a nice winner last time out, has improved in all 3 starts. So there's some directions to go in here. I don't know if anyone's going to be that overwhelming of a short price. It probably gets spread around between 3 or 4 in here.
This was probably the most exciting race for me to look at, the forward gal. Just I've seen some of them, but Atomically was my pick in juvenile fillies, and I mean she stunk, but it was not really a pick because I just loved what she did. I liked that they bought her and moved her way up in class, and it was a process of elimination sort of thing. I just was not in love with the 2-year-old group that lined up for the juvenile fillies. Now that being said, Atomically has also come back and done some great work for Todd Pletcher in the morning against some really serious horses. I mean, I believe that she's worked out a number of times down here and been keeping heads up. The winner of the Demoiselle. Oh, what's her name? I can't. It's just right on the tip of my tongue. That one that's 2 for 2, and those 2 were trading jabs all the way around the track at Palm Beach Downs. And she's not a very imposing horse when you see her in person, but she's got a lot of ability. And I think that she
Julia
had
Shining
probably
the
turned
pleasure.
Julia Shining. I know.
Right.
I
Yeah.
just pulled it
Is
up
it the
right now.
pleasure?
Julia
Yeah.
Shining
Yeah.
is, I believe, the one that she's been working with, and they've been going head and head to Palm Beach Downs, and they both look good. And if Atomically has grown up and can do that same sort of thing because she's been on the inside where she drew today, she's willing to duel and go on. She's willing to set off the pace. She just has a lot of things in her corner. Now, I will say, if you're not impressed with what she's put in, you're not blown away by any of the state bred races, you don't want Lynx, you don't want Atomically, uh, undervalued Asset, undervalued on the board, but a really, really nice filly. The Biloxi Blues came back and almost pulled one off on Sunday. It wasn't the most impressive field in the world, but she still handled things very well. Undervalued Asset wiped the floor with her when she broke her maiden. We haven't seen her since November, but undervalued Asset is a horse of the future, regardless of what she does in this group. And looking back in the maiden wins and some of the stakes wins with the rest of them, I just can't see anybody beating her if she's ready and if she likes Gulfstream surface.
The one that I thought showed me a little bit of something in her 3rd start in particular was Positano Sunset, who she ran into a couple pretty nice fillies in her first 2 starts. In her debut, she was behind Pretty Mischievous, and in that particular race, there was multiple next out winners. Pretty Mischievous is 3 for 4, came back to win the Untappable. In that race, we also saw Fee and Signs come back to win. So good race in the debut, then comes back in the 2nd start, runs into the horse that you were just talking about, Julia Shining. No real shame in being defeated by that runner at Keeneland. And Julia Shining was really impressive in that victory at Keeneland. Positano Sunset showed improvement in start number 2, then came back in start number 3 at Churchill Downs. And she got a pretty nice trip. She just sat 4th on the outside. She was always within 2. She moved to the lead, the top of the lane. And what I like is she got a challenge and then she put away that rival too. So she kind of showed multiple dimensions. It wasn't like she just fell into a trip. She moved to the lead and then got another challenge and had to put that runner away. I'll give her a little bit of a look as, I think it's pretty contentious. And who else in here would be on your radar? Or I don't know, how would you play this race then, kind of multi races or looking at it?
I might use Positano Sunset. I think she'll be undervalued for what she brings to the table. Ian Wilkes hasn't gone off to the fastest start, lots of pieces. She'd be one I'd use underneath for the value that she provides, but I didn't see a whole bunch outside of Atomically and undervalued Asset. Now, in looking at some of the local horses, I know that Lynx was very impressive, starting her career off with 3 wins. I don't know if this Phillies Cup of Tea is going to be going much longer than her last win in the Susan's Girl. I think that Lynx.
They go quick early. That'll help her, right? A horse like her, she probably will want some a good pace in here to run at. So if we see some of these outside horses get caught up, maybe that helps her a little bit.
There isn't a whole bunch of passing going on that main track. I mean, a
Yeah,
little bit, but Lynx, I think her kick gets dulled a touch when she does go a tad longer than that. I think that this is about where you could stretch the rubber band, if you will, with Lynx. I'm going to probably take a pass on her. I was impressed with Apropos' win in the slop in the
me
middle of
too.
October,
Yeah,
but stepping horses up, I think Jimmy Toner is something like 0 for 7, taking horses out of their maiden win, putting them in this kind of spot. They just need a little bit more to them, although she has shown a lot from the start. And another horse from that Delaware Park race. I know we wouldn't look back on the Delaware Park races, but a horse that got eased out of that race actually came back and won again today, but had to do so against claimers. As far as the rest of them go, I think Arella Star is going to take a lot of starch out of anybody who tries to steal it. The inside horse Flakes did run behind or did beat a 1-2 favorite in Mama Maria. Bucking Beauty came back to win while I was there, but Bucking Beauty, I don't know if it is on anyone Oaks radar yet. I like those mixed races that they have, the ones that she came out of, those maiden optional claimers where they let Florida breds run without the tag. But in any other spot, in any other track, she'd be in for a tag. So I question if Flakes can do that against this sort of
I agree.
company. But there's good fits for her in Florida down the road. And she is a very young foal. So I think that brighter days are ahead for Flakes. But as far as the locals go, I think most of them are a tad up against it. I didn't see a huge favorite, like you said, but I didn't see too much outside of the favorites that I thought were leaps and bounds ahead of them at a price.
There was a horse that was named Apropos a few years back, and it was one of these. I was working the shift on TVG, and then I think I was either having to stay a little bit longer than I was supposed to. So I was just talking about a couple races that I hadn't
You?
looked at all. So I hadn't like handicapped the races or looked at the replays or anything. And the horse I just butchered Apropos' name on the air so bad. It's like one of those where I looked down, I was calling it A props or something, and I'll just never forget it. It's just like one of those moments where I was just on live TV, just like, oh my God, that was so awful. That was so awful. So hopefully Apropos will I don't know, do something for me and well at some point this horse, maybe I'll throw him in or throw her in at 15-1. So I'll just feel differently about the word in general. But I agreed with you. I thought the effort was fine. Like it was good. There was no knocks on it. And I like the fact that she showed she can sit off the pace a little bit if she has to. She kind of
Yeah.
carved out a nice spot behind a wall of horses. And the race has already come back a little bit live. But yeah, I thought the sevens, like just this horse feels like she might be a nice horse. She just does. You just kind of get that feel with undervalued asset. I mean, Red Carpet Ready was nice in both of those races too. So some fun 3-year-old fillies in the Forward Gal as we continue on our Gulfstream Park Saturday journey. We're up to race number 11 now. It's the Sweetest Chant. Angela, so we have 3-year-old fillies in here. We saw Cairo Consort. She's a pretty nice filly. She was third in the Breeders' Cup. I actually caught on to her up at Woodbine, and I actually picked her in a fantasy league last year, and because I really thought she would have a good shot to compete with some of the better ones. So I was really happy to see how well she did, when she faced legitimate graded stakes company. And then she changed barns. She came into the Pletcher barn. She's kind of handy. I don't know if at the end of the year she's going to be like the best of the 3-year-old fillies, but right now, early on, she's sort of one of those horses who is good at 2. She's really versatile. She can show different dimensions. I understand why she'll be one of the horses to beat in here. She's kind of honest and she runs pretty well. Behind her, though, there are, another kind of fun grouping of horses. The horse on the inside, Sweet Lou's Got Aces, is intriguing. Malimu, I feel like, will show some improvement. I liked what I saw from Alpha Bella in that turf debut, and this one has some pretty nice little turf pedigree. Could be a really good one on there. Heavenly Sunday, nothing to knock about that horse who freaked at Indy, and then they wanted to see how good she was. She goes over to Keeneland, and she proves that she's got some quality. Stephanie's Charm just keeps running like honest races at big prices. She's going to come running. Another kind of fun betting race, like the turf races are kind of intriguing, that we talked about in this sequence. And, some of the prep races for the 3-year-olds on the dirt may not be quite as sexy. I thought this was another fun race.
No, I did too, and I found it fairly paceless outside of maybe the inside horse, but she's not that quick if you look at the fractions at Aqueduct. but it was a good turf course, so I'm willing to take that with a grain of salt. I wouldn't be surprised if she takes them a good part of the way. That Sweet
Mhm.
Lou's got aces.
Yeah.
She was schooling in the paddock today. She looked all right. She got kind of hot, but I mean that's why they school them. She's not a physically overwhelming sort of filly. I just don't like the fact that she's worked over at Paul Meadows. She comes over to the dirt. She's worked on the turf. I don't know if this was like plan A with her. I think it was, but I mean, you'd have to ask Gray Handle. But that doesn't indicate to me a horse that's aiming straight for this, like a horse like Malibu. Now, she did not run in the Ginger Brew, but she still was so impressive in the wait a while. Maybe they didn't need to do that. She only has 2 starts to her. Julian Leparoux got to know her a bit better in that last race. And I thought the way that she closed sets her up to probably sit closer as long as she doesn't dwell in the gate again and make a big improvement. Now, you get 10-1, maybe not, but I still thought that Malimu was so, so good. And you were actually able to close a touch on the turf course last weekend. Maybe Malimu could pull the upset. I was trying to look for something in here because if the last race, the favorites were rock solid to me, this race, they're anything but. I respect Cairo Consort and her good race in the Ginger Brew.
But
If I was to
she's
take one out of there, it'd be her, but
yeah, she's not like at her price, she's not like awesome, right? We're not lining up at the windows to go bet her when she doesn't really tower over the field on figures, and she's just sort of nice. She's handy. Like she's really honest, but there
yeah.
are others in here. I think based on like how you're looking at this race, I am too. And one of the horses who I'm definitely going to use is Alpha Bella. I just think
Mm.
she's going to sit in a really nice spot. Like it just doesn't seem like there's that much speed in here. I think she's either going to be really close, like on the lead, or just sitting really close to it, which was the trip that she got last time out. And if you look at her pedigree, she's actually bred to be a really nice one on the grass. Her dam was very, very solid. Dam was a stakes winner on the turf, was multiple graded stakes place. And as far as the siblings are concerned, she's a half to multiple graded stakes winner, Australia, multiple graded stakes winner right here, Andina Del Sur, actually grade 3 winner. And then you have Australia Mia, who's multiple group stakes winner overseas.
Uh-huh.
And then you have another 4-time turf winner. There's just a lot of turf in this pedigree and some pretty nice, classy horses. So maybe we get pedigree plus trip. Now, is she quite as good? No, but I guess that's sometimes where the trip can be the equalizer. Can she just fall into a nice spot, maybe sit in second and get the jump on some of the deeper closers? I'll throw her in. I completely agree with you with Malimu. Like if you're playing late exotics, I think she's a must include. Like anything 5-1 plus is fine. I wouldn't want to take lower than that because she doesn't seem like she has a lot of speed, and she might be a little quirky in both of her races. She's just been she's had some issues, but I expect her to unlaunch like a wicked late rally.
Yeah, at least expect that, and I'm sure she'll be about 19 wide, but
Yeah.
it it it's still more of a class play for me, just the way that this filly made a nice splash coming into the US. She beat 14 horses in her first start. She did so as the favorite. So there's more here than we've seen in the US. And if you do like her and she does any sort of running today, you're going to get half the price for the next few starts. So I'm probably going to dive in on Malimu. I don't have, admittedly, a real strong opinion in this race. It's not going to be one where I blow my bankroll, but it will be interesting to see where all of these go next because they come from a very diverse array of prep spots to get into
Hmm.
here. Metaphysical was another one who's run very well in her couple of starts since coming from Churchill to Gulfstream. Now, was that an ease up in competition? Or is it because she likes it so much more down here? They were able to get her over synthetic and over a turf surface. I don't know, because I mean, she didn't run bad when she was at Kentucky Downs. She ran into Riding Pretty, who sliced between horses and somehow got up, but still ran a winning race. Those were optional claimers. It'll just really shake out a lot of that. I think a lot of questions that you have for a lot of these fillies. Maybe not with Cairo Consort, but the rest to
Yeah.
see where they go next.
Where they stack up to and like what level they are. This is a nice kind of
Precisely.
measuring stick for a lot of them. A Philly like Heavenly Sunday too. I need to see a little more from. She won nicely. She got just a beautiful trip. I mean, she was just sitting right behind the leaders. She was inside. She kind of moved in a little bit of a tight spot, but she got in through the rail and just exploded. So things opened up nicely for her. She'll have to continue to improve in here. That's the 8 Heavenly Sunday in this 11th race, which is the 11th of 12. And as we turn the page to race number 12, it's the Grade 3 Holy Bull with Kentucky Derby points on the line. In this one, Angela, we have these 3-year-olds traveling a mile and a 16th in here. No real big names or any of the heavy hitters at this point of the Derby trail, like none of the really strong horses from last year or horses who have been extremely impressive early on from just a pure wagering standpoint. Cyclone Mischief got a big figure prepping at Gulfstream on January the 8th. He earned a 90 Beyer speed figure. He was coming out of the Kentucky Jockey Club, and he's won 2 of his 4 starts. He has a win at Gulfstream, and he actually showed he can sit off a little bit if he has to. Others in here that'll get some support. The horses that come out of the Mucho Macho Man, there were 4 of them. But you and I were kind of talking before the race started. I don't know how strong that particular race really was.
And no disrespect to Legacy Isle, he did all the running on the front end. They went very fast, but nobody came and got him.
Yeah.
He was taken down the second, but he was moving around because he was so tired.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought that somebody would come and get him. And I don't think that he'll be any lower than Lord Miles. I would expect Lord Miles, especially with the blinkers going on, to be the more well bet of those 2 entities coming out of there. And Lord Miles, I didn't love the rail draw for him. He just looks kind of big and lost. When I was talking to Brian Nadeau, who does analysis down there, he just said the blinkers could be the very best thing possible for this horse right now because he just looks around a bit. It still is only 2 starts deep into his career. And I mean, he's by Curlin. He's probably going to get better with age, just get a little more on track with what his job is. That might not be on Saturday, considering it is only his 3rd start. So while I think he won't win, I think that he's probably the most bettable of those entities that do come out of the Mucho Macho Man. But like you said, it was a touch underwhelming, to be honest, the way that they finished up in that. They just didn't come home very quick, and it doesn't give you inspiration that they're going to go out there and run 1, 2, 3, 4.
No. The horse who I want to talk a little bit about is the one on the outside, Rocket Can. I think he's sort of had some nice progression as of late. Once he's stretched out to 2 turns, we've seen noticeable improvement from him. He won in the slop. I like the fact that he came back after the slop win and he proved that it wasn't just because of the slop. It seems like it was just the 2 turns where it's been able to get him a little more forwardly placed. And then in his loss last time out, he lost to Confidence Game, who came back to finish 3rd in the Lecomte. In his other defeat, he lost to Instant Coffee, who was the winner of the Lecomte. The 4th place finisher in that November 26th race was a horse named Hit Show, who's the next out winner and was, I think, going to run in the Withers now that they're going to have to push that one back this weekend. And he's just pretty improved, and he should get a nice trip from the outside. I mean, I just don't love the horses that come out of the Mucho Macho Man. That sort of takes 4 of them out of this race. Cyclone Mischief feels like he's probably going to get bet pretty hard. This kind of, like, by process of elimination, makes him one of the more bettable horses in the race for me.
I agree. And why you got to take all my notes like that? Okay, well, yep. Okay, Confidence Game out, Hit Show out. Okay, well, Confidence Can also. How many times do you think we'll see Art Collector, if you're watching any sort of national broadcast, with these 2 hooked up winning the Pegasus, trying to duplicate that success with Rocket Can? He's no Art Collector at this point, but he does have talent, and he does enter here with a New York bred, same sort of deal. I like that they put these 2 into this race. I thought that they were both kind of interesting to me, just because you don't necessarily know what you have with Shadow Dragon, but Rocket Can, the more accomplished of the 2 up to this point, is a really good fit and found an excellent place to jump onto the Derby trail. You can see that he's been down here for a while. He's been working out at Payson Park very leisurely since the beginning of January. And I thought that Rocket Can, with the outside draw, really had a lot pointing to him. I thought that, being the fresh face, being a fair number, with connections that are obviously putting their horses in the right spots and having them ready in the right spots, could be the new face that sits close to the pace and potentially draws off. I wouldn't be surprised if Rocket Can wins, if he does it very, very impressively and clearly.
I agree. He just feels like it's a really good spot for him. He was third in his last start, kind of about 3 off in the two path in the second flight, and he was just chasing a lone speed winner confidence game. He loomed up at the top of the lane. He kind of took the lead. He held second. It was no excuses. He just lost to a horse who had a little bit more left in the tank because they got to set some kind of comfortable fractions and do it their own way out front. And then confidence game came back and showed he's a solid horse. And I'm not all that impressed with the rest of this group. I think Cyclone Mischief kind of got that nice figure, getting a pretty good trip. He settled inside. He was just behind horses. Arrival from the back started to move, and then he moved. He moved in between right with them, and he proved that he can sort of sit off the pace a little bit, which is fine. But I think he's going to get overbet a little bit, and I feel it just like we're saying. It just feels like this is a really good spot. Lots of questions about the rest of the field. The trip Rocky can get. And if we can get 3-1 plus, I think that's very fair. Like I have no problem singling him in some of my exotics. I'll probably play a lot of tickets with him, singled on the end.
Yeah, I won't blame you for that. And I take nothing away from Cyclone Mischief. I just don't know if he'll bounce off that. And a couple of horses just frankly didn't show up that day, or
Yeah,
at least didn't run the races that were expected of them. That flatters him, but he did everything right. You just don't know what you're going to get with the outside horse coming off that layoff. The workouts are just the workouts. What he can do in the afternoon when he's on a new track, when he hasn't been out since November, those are some of the questions that I think will keep him as the solid second choice.
I
But
agree.
that being the case, then why not go that way? If you think that there's a relative talent quotient between the two, always take the bigger price. And Rocket Can does come from connections that have had horses very much ready to run at this meet. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if he pulled it off.
There's a look at the 5 graded stakes races this weekend at Gulfstream Park. Angela, we appreciate you coming and hanging out with us. Can we got to pencil you back in for maybe like a few weeks from now with like the next round of prep so we can get you to help us out maybe with one of the ones at Oaklawn, or we can even talk about the next round when they come here for the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream Park.
Oh, I suppose. I always wait for those calls. I don't get them over
Got
the
to twist
summer.
your arm. I'll twist
I
your
would
arm a little
love
bit.
that. Well,
Absolutely.
I worked at Oaklawn too. It's a quirky little track. I like them both, but I will try to help guide you in the direction of the winner's circle as much as I can. And I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me.
Yeah, I have a conversation coming up next about Santa Anita, and yeah, unfortunately, that one with that prep race this weekend is just not going to be all that much fun to discuss. Poor Colin and I when we are talking about that one in a little bit. So we do have a
Ooh.
few other good races coming up at Santa Anita to talk about. And if you're listening to the podcast version of this, we'll have everything put together for you. So we'll have conversations about Santa Anita and on Gulfstream for Saturday, and we look forward to having Angela back again sometime very soon to help us out. And when we've seen you out at Gulfstream Park recently, or when you're out there doing work at Gulfstream or at Canterbury, sometimes they can bend your arm to get a little more social media, get a little more posted on the social media. I know you don't love it here and there, but when you do, we really appreciate getting your picks and getting your analysis. So we'll give you a follow at Angela Hermann with 2 N's 15.
Yes, that's me. Hey, I've been making an effort to tweet more
I
lately.
know. Yeah.
I've been trying. It's not even that I don't like it. It's just it's not always close to me, but I do love interacting with everybody and learning all about this new track and meeting everybody. I haven't been to Gulfstream very much. So if you're out there and you see me anytime in the near future, or if you're at Canterbury, say hello. I'm very easy to find. And Gino, if you ever venture outside of California, you make sure that those are one of your stops.
Yeah, if I ever venture outside of my chair that I sit in, it's comfy. It's comfy. It's got my grooves in the chair. I don't. So that's what DoorDash is for. They come and drop everything off to me. I don't need too much, but I'll start making the trip soon, especially once the little man gets a little bit older and can come hang out and have some fun with me too. So, Angela, it's always such a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you so much, and good luck this weekend at Gulfstream Park. And we'll talk to you again real soon.
All right. Thank you. Good luck to you and good luck to everybody listening.
Thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out with us here. We'll keep talking more racing on That's What G Said podcast. Don't go anywhere.